dark figure freaking out on my porch. I didn't seriously believe in the supernatural. Have you seen or heard anything weird around here? My name is Michael Adams. Some people know me as the Lord of Ord on YouTube. The reason why I got involved with Bigfoot. So in 2017, I was in Crossroads in my life. I was part of the truther movement on the World Wide Web and internet, and I got very discouraged with that. And so I figured I'd investigate something that you're not supposed to. And I picked Bigfoot, and my goal was to prove that Bigfoot was a government psyop and a joke. So that was my goal. And then I started interviewing folks, and started we did a series of shows with MK Davis and several others. And as time went on, I was interviewing these folks. I started to realize that I wasn't going to be able to know if this stuff was real or not unless I did the research myself. You know what I mean? It's just depending on people's stories. Not to disrespect them, but you know, you don't know until you know. So, and so basically in July 2017, I decided to start doing my own field research. And what happened was, in the beginning of July, I went to a place. It's called Oak Openings. I live in Northwest Ohio, and one of the things is, if you look at the reports out there, there's not. I don't know if there's any at the time. There might have been a few, but there's nothing that I could find. And so I wasn't expecting very much, because Northwest Ohio, and it's not like a place you're supposed to see Bigfoot and all that. But I was paying attention to different folks on the internet and learning about tree structures, TP structures, X structures, tree lanes, et cetera, et cetera. And so, you know what? Maybe I'll just go out in the woods, take my son at the time, he was 5. And while we're at it, nothing happens. There's a new park there and you can play there. And the darndest thing happened, right? Listening to these people and all that. I pull over to the side, and there's a place. This section there is well known as the sand dunes. One side is of the road, and the other side is, at the time, was mostly just woods. But it was summertime. There was undergrowth and that kind of thing, so I couldn't really see what was in the woods there. But I figured, we'll just walk in there and see what happens. Wasn't expecting very much, and darndest thing, I we get through the undergrowth there, and sure enough, there's a giant tree lane. And me and my son, we would walk under. It was big enough for us to walk under and all that. And I'm like, this is what, I spent all this time. As a kid, hunting, trapping. As an adult, I was yeah, my education was in environmental science, management, and ecology, and I was in greenscaping and designing nature trails and wildflower meadows and bogs and all this kind of stuff. So it's been big outdoorsman, like so many other people. They seem to end up in this. And I was into fishing pretty much at the time, and I was like, I never saw anything like this. I never noticed anything that's like this thing called tree teepee. Yeah, tree structures, and that's when things really started to change. It got pretty bizarre. So one of my problems too is that I was damaged by the swine flu jibby jab back in 2009. So I had ended up with MS, and so it was gonna cause problems for me as well, as far as going out in the woods and all that kind of stuff. So I said, you know what I'll do is I'll do my research close to home, and local parks and groves and patches of woods, and just around the edges and that kind of stuff. And so I took my cheap cell phone and started filming these places and started filming the edge of the woods. And I started noticing things, not only tree structures, but just things that didn't quite add up. That I was seeing them in my eyes, right? And so, and and then I was filming stuff, and there's stuff's in the images, and so then I had to research pareidolia, and I heard constantly this thing about pirate pareidolia, and I'm looking at some of these images, and it's not adding up. These things are not the same thing as what they claim pareidolia is. These are not just little in nubs or tree bark and strange arrangements. It's not the same thing as what you see when you study pareidolia. These are like looking like things popping out of the trees and that kind of stuff. I'm like, man, I don't know about this. It's kind of bizarre. But I continued, and what happened was, um, is like in 2017 in July, then I was going places and filming, and I found a place in the middle of my town, believe it or not, in a cemetery, a Roman Catholic cemetery. It was an old one, and there was a ravine that cut right through it, and there was a big, I believe it was a maple tree. No, it was an oak tree as well. Excuse me. And it was large. The girth of the width of the tree, I couldn't put my arms around it, but about 5.5 feet, about my height, between 5.5, 6 feet, there it was just broken right in half. Big tree, and it was leaning against across the ravine, and still had its leaves and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, this is really bizarre. And we didn't have any storms that summer. There was no tornadoes or anything like that. What was this? I mean, it still had the leaves. It was broken, just a broken half, and just. And I started noticing things. I was like, my eyes playing, my eyes playing with me. But I'm seeing like dark figures, dark shadowy things on the other side. This is the middle of the day, and so I took a few pictures, kept going through places in my area and all that, looking for any kind of signs of Bigfoot. And I didn't believe in Bigfoot this time, right? Just even after talking to and doing numerous shows with MK Davis and others, and I was just like, yeah, until I see it, I'm not going to believe it, kind of thing. And uh, what happened was, I believe it was the very first Thursday of August, 2017. What happened the night before, I was talking to my big brother who lives in Northern California, in the same area and region where the Patterson film was filmed. He and his wife actually, he said he saw one. Um, and I was like, well, I was talking to him and said, Eric, everything that's happening to me doesn't seem to add up. It's not adding up the way that people said it's supposed to be. And I mean, at the time, I was a very religious person. I don't know, but at the time, I'm like talking about, these things seem to be more like something spiritual or something. And it was interesting the night before, and this is going to be hard to believe, but the night before, I'm talking to my brother and telling him this. He says, Mike, don't be surprised now that you're starting to figure out what's happening here, that you start running across First Nation people. And I was like, well, that's going to be pretty hard to happen where I'm at in Northwest Ohio. I don't know any. The closest thing to indigenous person, a Native American, is me because I'm half Ojibwe. But I don't have any I don't have any contact with anybody who's Ojibwe outside the family, right? And my father had died. It was on my dad's side. It was just me, and didn't know anybody. So, but he says, yeah, I'm like, you're gonna probably start meeting people from First Nations folks because they understand about Sasquatch and that what the reality of who and what Sasquatch is. So I'm like, all right, I'm out to find the truth here, and still not really believing it. And prior to that, I actually believe I had a sighting of a Sasquatch, and that would have been about 10 days earlier. I think it was about Friday, is what it was. When I was doing some research in my area, at the time, even though I had MS, I could use a cane, so it limited me to do much. I couldn't. It's not like I couldn't walk around it in the woods. I just couldn't go deep in the woods, and I didn't trust that. But when I was in the middle of my town, there was a field, and it was at night, and it was one. I don't know if you've Linda, or if you heard from anybody else about this. There's times when you have like these kind of bizarre situation or settings where the air seems a little different and the atmosphere is different, all that kind of stuff. And something just motivated me that evening to just go look around. So one of the things is there's a ravine that goes on the west side of a cemetery in my town, and then across the main drag there's a field, and there's a creek that runs through there. It's called 10 Mile Creek that ends up in the Ottawa River. I don't think, I'll check out the edge of the ravine here and see what happens. And I'll go to that field and just see what happens. And yeah, what happened is it was just about dark. I was in the field there, and I saw something when I was paying attention, filming like a patch of grove of trees, and across the stream, I saw this rather large, what I thought was a person in a hoodie. That's what it looked like at first, and it's like a beige looking hoodie, but and there's a trail there, and it just went for 100 yards plus, going from the west to the east, on the other side of the creek, and and count of three, one, two, three, and it was gone. It was past the bridge, the wooden bridge that goes over the creek, and I'm like, what the hell did I just see? And I think to myself, could that possibly be a big dude in a hoodie riding his bicycle? I mean, it's the beginning. It's like the end of July. It's super humid, and no one would possibly be riding a bike that fast and that dark and a hoodie. Like, what did I just see? And and that evening too, which was really bizarre, is that just maybe 10, 15 minutes later, I was talking to some guys who were working on hotel. They're doing some outside work out of the hotel, and they're relaxing, having a beer and just hanging out. And then it's like, have you guys seen anything strange? And they said no. And they didn't quite understand where I was coming from and all that. And I didn't know how to say or talk to people about what I was up to because it was so bizarre. I mean, who else? I don't know anybody in my area. Even after talking to people and everything, there was nobody in my area that was doing Bigfoot research that I knew of. And how do you talk to somebody about Bigfoot in a familiar town? But what was really bizarre, there was a guy that pulled in, and he worked for the law enforcement. He had a 911 license plate, and I said, I'll go talk to this guy and see what he knows. So I go up to him. I ask him, I go, oh, 911, what's up? He looked at me, turned around, he goes, 411. I go, what? And he goes, oh, no. And he's, you know, walked away and walked into the hotel. And I was like, why the hell did that guy just say 411? am I imagining these things? Is this just like my imagination? Now, I've been hearing about stuff about this kind of, they talked about high strangeness and kind of Bigfoot and all that. And they talked about how a lot of times when Bigfoot is around, the atmosphere changes and all that. And so is that what I just kind of experienced right now? Um, but then go 10 days later, actually 9 days, talking to my brother about this. He says, yeah, don't be surprised that you're going to meet a Native American. All right. So within 24 hours, in my town, it's predominantly Caucasian, just your typical, Midwestern Great Lakes town, Uh, I had never seen an indigenous person ever in my town, right? And I never thought it was going to happen that way. I thought it probably would be through the internet or something like that, or meet one. But it was about 8:30 at night. I was hungry, and I went down to there's a strip mall there with restaurants and pizza joint. I got myself a pizza and just a cheap one and as I was walking out the pizza joint with my pizza, lo and behold, up the hill, there's so many things. I don't know where to begin. It was a very bizarre year. Uh, Up the hill was a guy with long black hair, and he's in this like kind of dusty, worn out jeans and just wearing black. And I'm looking at this dude with his long hair, and I go, "Is that a Native American? Is that a First Nation person? That can't be. What are the odds?" I just talked to my brother um, yesterday about this, and this can't be. I gotta go talk to this guy. So I got in my car with my pizza, and as he's walking up the street there from the hill, I said, "Hey man, are you a Native American?" He goes, "Yeah." And he looked like it. When I lived in California myself, I was a forest firefighter in 1987, and I worked side by side with Navajos and First Nation people from like Alaska and that area. And so I had, some familiarity of what they look like. And this guy definitely looked like one. Yeah, all the features, right? And I'm like, hey man, if would you be interested? I just bought pizza. Would you be interested in talking for a couple minutes? And I'll give you a piece of pizza or whatever. And he said, yeah. So we went to the other side of the street. There's a parking lot there with there's like a bank there, and it's got like a copper dome roof. And I was talking and I said, man, did you know about that? Because there's one of the things I neglected to say is down the road and just down the hill from with this strip mall, those of restaurants, there's a dumpster down the hill there. I found a small teepee structure that was right next to the parking lot. And just maybe 30, maybe 40 yards below the hill from where the dumpster is. And there was a path there and one path. And I thought, maybe it's just kids doing it or something like that. And like, there's no way there would be a teepee structure in the middle of my town right next to the parking lot. But there was. And I asked him about the teepee structure. He said, you know about that teepee structure? And he goes, yeah. And I asked him, do you know much about Bigfoot or Sasquatch? He goes, yeah, man, I've seen him. I see it once in California and another time in Montana. So we're talking, and we're getting along and all that. And I asked him, I said, man, would you, would you need a ride home? Where you heading to? He says, yeah, going home. So would you like a ride home? It's about 4.5 miles away from where we're at. I said, I'll drive you home. You want? Would you like that? He said, yeah. And as we're talking, I said, and there's just something going on in the middle of the cemetery that I know in the middle of the town here. There's like a ravine there, and there's a tree that's been broken. And I've been seeing shadowy figures. You want to go check it out before we go? And it was getting dark, and I was like, this might be a perfect time to do it. After all, I'm not quite sure what I'm dealing with here, and Now I got full confidence in myself, just going there by myself. And he said, "Yeah, let's do it." So, and by the way, he was Crow. Turns out he's Crow Indian, and he go up with the name Crow, which I didn't think was very original, but what the heck, Crow. So he says, "Oh, my friends call me Crow." And I found out later on the drive home that he was also a Crow Indian medicine man. And he practiced what he said was the dark arts, and the death. Uh, uh, what do they call it? The dark arts of death, shamanism type of thing. I think I misspoke that. Excuse me. But I found out that later. But so as we're driving in the cemetery is a quarter mile to a half a mile away from where we're at. So we go over there and we pull into the cemetery. It's one of those cemeteries that doesn't have a gate, and it's just the middle of the town. And it's one of those things. So it's old. We still, and the road actually is on the edge of the ravine. So we're now on the west side of the ravine. It's starting to get dark. And I show him the tree and I said, "Dude, I've been seeing stuff here. They look like dark figures, but I'm not quite sure what's going on. I think this might be what they talk about as a nest, but I'm not sure." So he, believe it or not, Crow, the Crow Indian medicine man, decides to do a couple of the Sasquatch howls, that we hear about, right? And you see people doing, right? And he does a couple of those, and I'll be damned, two dark figures on the other side of the ravine, on the other side of the tree, pop up, and we both saw it. And he goes, "You see that? You see that?" I go, "Yeah, man. What the hell?" He saw eye shine with one of them. I didn't see the eye shine. He goes, "But you see the eye shine?" And I go, "No, man." I goes, "What the hell's going on here, man? This is like all happened so fast. I just knew this guy like a half an hour ago, but 24 hours earlier, my brother said I was supposed to meet and start having interaction with First Nation people, and all of a sudden it's happening, right?" And I know that's hard to believe. It's hard for me to believe. And the darndest thing is what he does. He decides to, he has, believe it or not, he has a couple pieces of pizza in his hand at this time, and he throws a piece of pizza at them, and the one to the left of the two pops up. I mean, he's massive on the other side. I'm talking. This is not only this. For what I'm talking about, it's no more than 30 yards from where we're standing. We're standing right on the edge of the ravine. On the other side of that tree, there's still branches, there's still leaves in it. Pops up, and he's massive. And he does another one of those Bigfoot howls that guys do, and throws a pizza at it. I got my store right here, and actually, what happened was is that he threw the pizza. Now, with the poof, both stood up. He did the howl, and then he threw the pizza, and the one stood all the way up. So they both popped up, and then the one to the left stood all the way up. And I go, "Man, what are you doing?" He goes, "What?" And so, for my studies, and anybody who did studies, Bigfoot's going to learn about, these coming home, hitchhiking, this whole thing about, potential these things, having the hitchhiking event or them coming home, visiting you after you have encounters. And I'm like, "Man, what did you just do? You just throw a freaking pizza at them, and they're going to come home to my place." And I only live like a mile and a half from where this place is at. And he looks at me and he just grins, and no big deal, man. So, next thing you know, that massive thing that looks like just shadowy. I mean, it was blacker than the darkness of night. I mean, it was black, jet black. Is now on the other side of the tree and the branches there. There's a big tree, and it's crawling up the ravine toward the ravine towards us. And the way it was crawling, people talk about spider crawl, but it didn't seem like a spider crawl. It seemed more like the way its arms were and its legs was more like how a frog would be crawling up slowly, or like a chameleon or something like that, slowly and deliberately. And I'm looking at this thing and I'm shocked. I mean, everything happened so fast, and I didn't really have time to really like get a fear or dread or anything like that. It's just, what the hell is happening? I'm standing right next to a dude who's a Crow Indian medicine man that I hadn't met or interacted with any First Nation people in years, decades. Nothing even supposed to be here. I'm in the middle of the cemetery, and there's a ravine, and there's this thing that looks just like Bigfoot freaking crawling up the ravine. And what was shocking about the thing too was how it shimmered. It shimmered like it had electricity running through it, like it had energy running through it, like every single of his hairs was just shimmering, right? I mean, and when I talk about jet black, I mean, at this point, it's got gotten dark. It just turned dark, and it was darker the night sky. It was, and massive arms, big legs, the typical thing that you hear about, the broad shoulders. I figured going back later on that the thing had to be uh, well over 9 feet, probably a few feet more than that, but it had to be at least 9 feet tall. It was massive, broad shoulders, big arms. I couldn't see the hands or feet or like the toes and all that kind of stuff, just the outline. And I didn't see the face. That's another thing about it. And they talk about the head and not being sunk in there, right? And the conical shape and all that, and was crawling up the ravine. And I'm like, it's time to go, dude. I don't know what the hell's happening here, but this thing got as close as 15 feet in front of us. It's hard to believe as that is. I got 15 feet in front of us, and I'm like, uh, I don't know what the hell's going on. I don't know who this guy is. This thing's crawling up the ravine. There are people talking about, they call Bigfoot, right? And it's time to go. I'm in the middle of a freaking cemetery, right? I mean, it's dark in the middle of the cemetery. It's a Thursday night. I mean, I got to worry about getting the hell out of here, running over some tombstones and everything else. I can just imagine, you know what I mean? Let's get the police report. Well, what were you doing in the middle of the cemetery? Oh, we're just looking for Bigfoot. We saw one. You know what I mean? Who's going to believe me? Who's going to at the time? And so we get in the car and we leave. And I said, man, this is the most amazing freaking thing I've ever experienced in my life. What do you think about this? It's awesome, man. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, what? And I asked him, I said, man, hey, we should do is we should exchange phone numbers and all that. And maybe, I was thinking, hey, maybe I finally have somebody that I can do this Bigfoot field research with, right? Somebody might know what the hell's going on. And he didn't seem all, in fact, he didn't give me the phone number. What he did do though, oh, there's another thing too, that said when he's crawling up the ravine, this is time I was like this, I was a Christian and all that. And I was like, do you think, we should pray for to Jesus? He's like, oh, no, no. And I'm like, all right, maybe we should just go then. And as we're driving him his home, he starts telling me these stories. And this is going to be hard to believe too. So, but he starts bragging about some really dark stuff. And he's not kidding. He starts to really reveal the fact he's really into this dark um, and death magic. He's really into it. And he's like, um, yeah, man, once I saw Lucifer, and I go, what? I think I said, yeah, sure. And he starts talking about how he went down to Mansfield with a group of people. And he starts bragging about how these they sacrificed a 15-year-old girl. And and I and I look at him and I go, what? And he goes, yeah. And what happened was the most amazing thing. This amazing, he called it Lucifer. This most amazing being entity showed up. This was beautiful thing he ever seen in his life. And I'm like, what did you say? He says, yeah, it looked like Lucifer or something. First of all, I think to myself, okay, right. But I asked him, said, no, dude, you said you're involved in a sacrifice of a 15-year-old girl. Dude, if I was involved with that, I would feel like the biggest pile of shit there ever was. What the hell are you telling me that? And he shut up and it got really dark. Now, the funny thing about this guy is he had salt, pepper hair, and dingy, like black outfit and all that kind of stuff. And his teeth were really messed up. Something I remember. And he wanted me to take him to his place at first. That's what we agreed on. But he says, there's this place. It's called Rosie's Restaurant. It's Italian restaurant. Will you just drop me off at the parking lot? And I'm looking at him, and I'm like, after everything, I mean, here I am. Well, everything just happened. I just saw two Bigfoot. One crawled up a freaking ravine. It's not supposed to be happening. And I'm standing next to a Crow Indian medicine man. He's telling me about all these terrible things that he did as he driving him home. And in the middle of a cemetery, and as we get to where he supposedly lived, there was a foggy bank there. It was covering the side road and where the parking lot was, and we're in the neighborhood where he supposedly lived, right? And when we got to Rosie's restaurant in the parking lot, I just pulled into there and then let him out, and he walked off. And as he walked away, um, he just walked into the street, the side street there, and you could barely see the house and all that. He just walked into the fog. It was like he just vanished or disappeared. And I'm like, what the hell is happening here? What the hell just happened? Who's going to believe anything about that just happened? This is so bizarre. This is beyond anything that I have ever been told or have any understanding of. And yeah, it's interesting. About a week later, too, I ended up seeing my first UFO of all times. And that's a very bizarre one because it's like, I pulled over to my mom's place and I was sitting, I was standing on the driveway there by my car and looking out to the north and up. And this is broad daylight and sky there, and about 100, 200 feet above the tree lines, and some tall trees and maples and oak trees. And there's this object in the sky. And I'm looking at it and I go, what the hell is that? And at first I thought it might have been a bird or something, but it was steady there. It was just steady there. The northwest, I remember it, just on the edge of the tree lines there. And the thing was like pulsating in different colors. Like one of us different colors is different, like shades from black to gray to white. And it was just slowly, it was moving incredibly slowly. And if my cheap cell phone, I try to film, but anybody's ever tried to film anything, the skies, think about the moon, you used to try to film the moon with your cell phone. It looks a lot bigger with your own eyes, but when you film it with your cell phone, it's just like a little dot, right? And this was happening here with this thing. And I actually, it took a long time too. And I was standing there for about 10, 15 minutes. And I'm like, I wonder what the hell that is. I think I might be seeing a UFO or something like an angel or something. I don't know. I mean, it seemed to be almost like flapping its wings or something, but it was just very slow. And I'm watching this. It's not a bird. It's not a balloon. If it was a balloon, it'd be moving a little more you know, tossed around with wind and more sporadically. This is for steady. And I'm like, is that a drone? And I'm like, that ain't a drone. I'm going to go talk to my mom. My mom is into angels and all that kind of stuff. And she's no longer with me as well. But she wasn't interested. Used a restroom. I came back out, and it was now in the northeast of the tree line above the houses and all that. And it had moved maybe five, 400 yards is what it would be, going from northwest to northeast from where my vantage point is. And I'm like, I'm watching this, and it took like half an hour, 40 minutes to cover that, and then it disappeared. And I'm like, what the hell did I just see? What the hell's I've never seen a UFO. I've never seen a Bigfoot. I mean, I spent a lot of time like talking to MK Davis and at grilling him about the Patterson film, and so that I wasn't convinced at all, even at this point, that even the Patterson film was legit. This is after me spending all this time with MK Davis, but I still wasn't convinced. And there was a couple other people that were involved too in the Bigfoot community I was talking to. One was a Choctaw medicine woman, and but she was, a half breed type of thing. And I there's a lot of weird, strange things that happened when talking to her too. So, and I'm like, what the hell just happened? In 6 months, I went from trying to disprove Bigfoot to actually having seen two Bigfoot in the middle of my town. This is not what's supposed to be happening. They told me, they've been telling everybody else they're out there. They have to be out in the woods, somewhere out deep in the woods. And then you need to have all these certain things in order to survive, the calorie intake and the size of these things. In my own experience, with ecology and dealing with part of the wildlife management and research in flora and fauna, and like this, there's just nothing that size. Two of them could possibly be living in the middle of my town. And mind you, on the town is there. I'm just kind of its edge was it is a suburb uh, of Toledo, Ohio, and it's on the edge where the farm fields are. And um, I'm right on the border of Michigan. And if you go west a mile or so, mile and a half, suburb starts dissipating to just, houses and large, 5 acre lots, that kind of stuff. And then you get the farm fields and the patches of woods. And, we have stream running there. I mean, I spent a lot of time as a kid in that stream, and I watched it from a child having, bass and grass pike and bullhead to have nothing but carp, thanks to development and all that. And most of like I used to hunt, and all those the woods I used to hunt just a mile from where I'm sitting right now are pretty much been developed. And although there's a crane towers a mile north of me, and then there's a couple creeks, and the main one, a couple streams that go into it. There's I don't know how. I know we have deer running around here, and we have some wild turkey and that kind of stuff. You'd find it, but well, how can anything that big, two of them, be surviving in the middle of my town? And who the hell am I going to talk to? And what was that dude with the who brought up 411 with the 911 license plate doing at that hotel? And it was really close to the stream and not very far away, a half a mile away from where I just had a Bigfoot sighting. Is there something going on in my community that people aren't talking about? That's what I'm thinking, right? I mean, what the hell? What did just happen? I try to talk to a few people about it, and because the people that are, the Bigfooters and the Bigfoot community, in quotes, and they couldn't accept it. Nobody, they just couldn't. They didn't even want to hear it. They're full of crap. You know what I mean? How can you're a rookie. You don't know anything. You haven't even done it. So how the hell do you end up having a Bigfoot encounter too in the middle of your town, right? I'm like, man, it really did happen. And then my next encounter, after that, I I got real religious, right? Because I'm thinking that maybe I saw demons or something like that. Which now I don't believe in any of that stuff. Sasquatch has ended up becoming a real blessing in my life, and the things that I discovered and I filmed and the people I've met. But at the time, there was no shaman to teach me. The, the religious people, and they didn't know what the hell they were talking about. They just were parroting what they read. Um, and the people that I was talking to and interviewing on YouTube, and it would be talk shoes actually at the time, and just started my YouTube channel as well. I mean, they were just sharing, these scary stories, and I'm like, there's got to be more to what's going on here. It doesn't add up in any way, shape, or form. The flesh and blood people, it doesn't. Because I'm gonna tell you something. When I saw those two, uh, the things that look just like Bigfoot in that ravine, the one that ended up crawling up the ravine towards us, got 15 feet in front of us. It was on the other side of the trees. And when it came to the other side, I didn't hear it. There was no noise. There was no rustling of the branches, no breaking of the tree limbs, no, nothing. It's as if it just went right through those trees. It went like because it actually did go right through the damn tree. I find out years later from my own, you know, as far as blood goes, Ojibways is a story about the Kitchesabe, and that it actually does do that. That's their legend or tradition is, right? Is that they come out of the trees. I'm like, I think I really did see something that was actually legit. And it doesn't add up to the stories that everyone else has been telling me and they've been telling us. In September, it was October, I was taking out the garbage. I hadn't heard anything. I actually I noticed about pattern with me when I start having things and I have these shocking experiences. I have a tendency, instead of pushing it, I take big breaks because I don't know. It's like so much to digest and try to process. But in October, taking on the garbage in the back there, and my neighbor next to me, I live in the daddy place. I live in the quadplex where my son's mother and her, she has the house a few blocks away. And I wanted to make sure I was still close to my son to be his dad. And it's a nice town. It's a safe town. Nothing happens here, right? And I'm like taking out the garbage. My neighbor next to me, she's at the same time takes out her garbage. And as we're walking to the garbage talking, we hear this thing that I heard on the internet that people talk about. It's called this Bigfoot samurai chatter stuff. And it's to the east of us. It would be to my right as this time as we're going north towards the garbage, which is just outside our detached garage. We both hear it. And she goes, "What is that?" And I go, "What that? Did you hear that?" And she goes, "What is that?" And just like a reflex after talking and listening and doing, because people on the internet, that's like, I go, "Booger, it's a booger." And she goes, "What?" It's a Bigfoot. She's like, "What?" And we look over there to where the sound came from, and there's nothing. We walk over, and where the sound came was the other side of our neighbors to the east of us. It would be right where their property line is and where the railroad tracks go. There's rain towers, and that's where the sound came from. We walk over there hesitantly, and there's nothing there. Nothing. We heard it. We both heard the things, the voice, the vocals. She doesn't, wasn't even thinking about that. I haven't told her at all about my experience. I didn't talk to anybody in my immediate like community and all that about what I'm going through, because there's no one to talk to who was going to believe me. And so she moved from the one ravine, which is the one ravine, the stream that runs through it is called North 10 Mile Creek. It eventually dumps into 10 Mile Creek, which then 10 Mile Creek, Ottawa River runs east to west. And eventually, like I said, ends up in the Maumee Bay and the lake area. I live about maybe 12 miles from the bay. And she's talking about she lived in an apartment there on that ravine, North 10 Mile Creek. And she says, one of the reasons I left and moved here, it's not just because, it's the apartment and the people and all that. I was hearing a lot of weird things in that ravine, strange noises and trees that sounded like they're being uh, crashing and all sorts of stuff. And I just had a weird feeling, and I couldn't wait to move out. And now that what the heck's going on? And I said, I'm trying to figure it out, but it doesn't make any sense. And but then nothing else happened until December of 2017. 2000, I think it was the 17th and 19th. It was a Monday. And I had my son, and at the time he was taking cry. He's taking lessons, and wanted to get there in time, so we left a little bit early. It was a warm December evening, and then it was a bit foggy and all that kind of stuff. And of course, at this time now it gets dark early. And so as we're walking out of our place and get to our car, I swear to God, something that looked just like a Bigfoot manifested, almost like it came out of the trees. And it got really close to me. At this time, I'm like maybe 5 feet away from the car. My son's already in the car. And I remember their eyes, the almond shaped eyes, the broad nose, the teeth, the smile. This one is more of a reddish brown, almost like the tannish color hair. And it just manifested. And I didn't see the whole thing. I just saw from the head, its shoulders, and its arms. Mind you, by this time I was so freaked out, and it just showed up right there, and I'm freaking out. I start taking pictures. I get my phone of all things, and I start rebuking this thing. And the time, like as if that was going to be the solution. I didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea what I was doing. Right. And I was so freaked out. And I get in the car and I take off to just get the hell out of there and get them to this karate class. And I'm in shock. For the next 3 days, it was the most bizarre 3 days of my life. Absolutely. And I mean, I was hesitant about coming home. And looking at it, I'm like, because my son at the time was 5. And what the hell am I going to say to a son? My son is 5, 6, 5. It's either 6 or 5. Um, what just happened? I think I just saw Bigfoot, and and he didn't respond. He didn't know what that meant. He just like, oh, oh, oh. And it was verified, by the way, 3 days later. So after we get home, weird things started happening in my place. They talk about the Mandela effect and that kind of thing, right? And I'm an artist, at least it was, and I had a lot of art on my walls and all that. And the paintings were like, it was this weird, the atmosphere in the house. Maybe it's because I was just petrified and afraid of what I just saw. I can't believe what I just saw. Listen, I wasn't on drugs at that time, and I can't blame it on the MS for what happened. I've discovered since then that a lot of other people had similar experiences, one way or the other. Like the paintings on my wall, the paint changed. It felt like there was like a presences in my place. I mean, I was afraid. I closed all the blinds, had the lights on. I was freaking out. My God, I was freaking out. And it's like, I call up this lady, Dr. Shepherd. She's supposed to, at the time, she was like, still is, so this woman that's into deliverance and all this kind of stuff, deliverance ministry about dealing with demons and all that kind of stuff. And I call her up and I know her from the internet, and she calls me back the next day, but she didn't, it's time. So I don't know what I'm doing, right? I have no idea what to do. And she calls up the next day. I'm telling her about it, and she's, oh yeah, this is what you need to do, and you get some olive oil, hold it, bless it, and then put it all over the place in the house and dark corners, and then the window seals and all that kind of stuff. Like, I don't have any of that stuff. I do have some. She just goes, "Do you have anything? What do you have?" I have some coconut oil, so we'll do that, right? So I do that, right? And I'm freaking out. My son starts acting strange. I see him that day too. He's in the bathroom, he's just staring at the mirror. He's a pale looking. What the hell? And he's talking to himself. I go, "What are you doing, Chase?" That's my son's name, Chase. And he just smiles and he's just looking at himself, and he's all pale. It's a long story, and we ended up actually taking him to the doctors that day. I had the police show up because I had to take him to the doctors because he didn't show up at school, and his mom didn't. She call them and let them know. But what happened is that through the course of those 3 days, and I was terrified. Oh my God, I've never been so scared in all my life. They talk about this dread and fear. Was the first time in my life I ever experienced this. Right? Listen, I'm 49 years old when this happened. Until all this stuff, I didn't believe in. Which is serious. I didn't seriously believe in the supernatural. I didn't seriously believe in. I didn't believe in Bigfoot at all. I didn't see anything almost those years, right? I just thought it was just people's
You,
imaginations.
Michael, do you think that you drew these things into you once you started giving it your attention?
Oh, it's 100%. That's what happened. That's
Yeah.
that's what 100% what happened. So what happened is then that it was Wednesday night, 3:30 in the morning. I'm sleeping in my son's bedroom with him because I'm petrified and what's going on. And I hear something walking on my porch. This thing is 5 feet away from me and it's walking back and forth on my porch. Now, I was asleep at the time. I mean, I could barely sleep those 3 days, but I finally fell asleep for, I felt a little better, at least being next to my son and protect him, right? And listen, I think, I wake up to this noise and I'm so exhausted and I'm so just like praying and praying and praying and nothing's happening. And, nothing, it's getting better. And I get up out of the bed and I just started F bombing it and screaming and yelling at the thing. And you could hear the thing like freaking out on my porch, right? And like knocking over stuff and everything, trying to get the heck out. At least that's what it sounded like. So, but shortly thereafter, this is like 3 in the morning. My buddy upstairs, Mike, he's he's works for the Air Force Reserve. He's got his own business, all that kind of stuff. He comes back. He comes back from his job around 3:30 in the morning. Well, he pulls into the driveway and he sees a very tall, dark figure. He said, "See, what happened was the next day I saw him about the same time as he's going to work for the next day." And I asked him, I said, he asked me how I was doing. And I was like, "Man, it's been a weird couple of days." And I asked him, have you seen or heard anything weird around here? Because I didn't feel like calling him. I didn't feel like talking to anybody around me because what am I going to say? I called Dr. Shepherd because Erica Shepherd, because that's her thing, right? As far as deliverance and dealing with dark spirits and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, I didn't know who to talk to. I mean, who the hell is going to talk to? So I asked him, "Did you see anything weird?" He says, "Yeah, man. Well, last night, man, there's this really, really dark, tall dude. He's all like dressed in black with a dark hoodie. He couldn't accept the fact that it could have been a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot, right? And maybe it was a good thing. But he says he was in our backyard and he was walking, like as I pull in and being the kind of guy that he is, he's like, who the hell's in our backyard, right? He's protective that way. He's one of those dudes, right? And he gets back in his truck and goes, he chases it to go chase it down, right? And as he's walking away in the side street, so he pulls out of our driveway, goes down the one street, the main street we live on, then the side street, pulls there to go after it and find out what the hell is somebody doing in our backyard 3:30 in the morning. And he he said it just disappeared. He drove up and down all over the place, up down the street and everything and everywhere, and he disappeared. He said it was the weirdest thing I ever experienced, ever seen. And I didn't say anything, and I still haven't, because he's the type of guy that, and I know, you got friends and acquaintances and people like that, and you just know weird. I bring up Sasquatch once in a while as a joke. Right now, he's actually on his way to go to Alaska to do some fishing. Right? I said, maybe you'd be lucky to see a Sasquatch. He's never seen anything. Well, he has seen one, but he doesn't believe that he's seen one. Is what's happened. But it was confirmation that it wasn't just me that saw something. Now, I don't know how they do this thing, Linda, or how they can go from uh, just being physical to basically disappearing to dematerializing to going through trees and popping out of trees. I have no idea how they do it. This Mike says, and yeah, we talk about paraphysical stuff and um, interdimensional, ultra dimensional beings, and these are just placeholders. Because the truth is, we don't know what the hell we're talking about. As far as I can tell, I mean, we have our experiences, and I understand. I mean, I talk to guys. Since then, I've talked to plenty of guys in the Bigfoot community who have nothing but something that seems like flesh and blood, and they're damn set on it, and I don't blame them for it. But then there's the rest of us who had this completely different thing that doesn't add up. Even I have a science background, folks. This is contrary to everything that I've been taught in my life, right? And the things I'm experiencing. And so, I've had, several other strange experiences, but that was like my first real two major encounters. I've seen a couple other sightings, and I actually stepped away. There was things going on the past 3 years, and I was one of those people who had a vocal voice, and I was warning people what's going on. It got me in a lot of trouble, but I cared about my community, my fellow humanity. So I rose my, I mean, I went through a lot. I mean, I wasn't just a keyboard warrior. I was out in the middle of the street warning people about stuff, which I never done before in my life. Right. So I took a break, after what just happened. I got real religious, read the Bible a bunch. I no longer am that person anymore, but at the time, that's what I needed. And, cause I didn't know any better. I didn't know that I had, and that we all have a bit of our own personal sovereign authority when it comes to these things, right? I learned that this year, actually. So I didn't really have anything going on until this past year. I don't know if you saw the video, but I've been posting video like 2023, last year, May 15th. I filmed a Sasquatch for the first time and video of it. And one of my sites that I go and visit, site GR, which is outside of town. When there's a stream and there's a power line that runs to north of it about a quarter of a mile. There's a stream, there's woods. It's on the edges of the town. There's a quarry and everything that you possibly could imagine. All the things, the ingredients that say that you can have a Sasquatch show. In my town, we have it. My town's not unique, and I actually believe at this point, Linda, that you can see these things anywhere, whether it's out in the West, in Canada, in the North America. But I know people. I just interviewed a guy from Sasquatch, Southwest Europe, and he's in Portugal. He's had signs and tree structures and teepee structures, and talking to people in England who have said these sightings, and throughout all of Eurasia. I mean, not I haven't talked to everyone over there, but I talked to enough people and listened to enough people and read enough. I've read Ivan Sanders' work and John Keel's work and all the old timers, and they've been talking about this stuff for a long time, and they've been talking about the high strangeness, the weirdness that's associated with Bigfoot. Now, I don't, and so to this past year, actually, I started 2020. Things started happening again. For some reason, I got reconnected with these things. And I started filming stuff in my neighborhood and my area and started filming stuff in the trees. And I got some amazing images with things that look like hooded people and human beings, shadow figures and Bigfoot and uh, things that look like, I mean, I guess they're definitely not pareidolia. I spent enough time to figure out which is what. If it was pareidolia, I wouldn't waste my time doing this because there's no money in this and there's no rewards in this. There's no if anything, there's a lot of abuse. There's a few people that understand, but to throw myself out there, I mean, since this time, because of all this stuff, I almost lost my son over this. My son's mother went to try to take me to court to keep him away from me because of my experiences. My best friend in high school won't talk to me. My whole family thing, nobody in the neighborhood, anybody wants anything to do with me. Somehow things spread, even though you're not talking to anybody. And I'm just like, but this past year is just like something motivated me, especially to start filming again. And I started filming stuff, and there's stuff in the trees, folks. And there's trees, there's connection with the Sasquatch. The Native Americans talk about the underworld, the middle world, and the upper world, and we walk in the middle world. And these trees are all around us. The root system in the underworld, the trunks of the middle world, and it branches up into the atmosphere, the upper world. And they seem to be like neurons to this world, right? And they have some kind of energy to them, electromagnetic energy, something like that, something that there's a connection with it. Now, I've listened to some other guys, some old timers, who say the same things. These guys that have even much greater, higher credentials, and people have been around, like Henry, probably about Frenzoni. I hope to talk to him. He talks about the same thing. He says he swears he's seen these things go through the woods and go right through the branches and trees and not even a sound. If you don't believe me, ask him. I didn't even know this. I didn't even know about this until, this week, actually, in particular, about Edward Henry, excuse me. Mike, we had a good show last night. It might be offend a few people, and they don't mean to, but I'm kind of frustrated in some ways because for some reason in the Bigfoot community, we don't want to talk about this. The powers that be do not want to take this to the level that needs to be taken to. They want to keep us stuck in this fighting about whether in the woo camp or the flesh and flood camp. And honestly, it has nothing to do with any of that. But that's where they want to keep us stuck. We're dealing with something that's so fantastic. The universe is made up of 99 point whatever percent plasma, fourth state of matter. We're just now starting to understand it. Quantum physics, we're just now starting to get a handle on it, just a little bit.
I agree with you. I think that we definitely have to look at these things and from multi angles because, like you, I've talked to a lot of people who've had some very unusual experiences with these things, and there again, about half the people I talk to is just simply a flesh and blood thing that they seem to encounter. But then there are other people that seem to have just very odd happenings around them. So, yeah, I think there's a lot about reality we may not understand yet. And I think we just have to keep an open mind regarding all of that.
I think that's the only way to understand that. And I just think that we can't dismiss both sides. We have to put it all together, right? Because it's like this, and I don't have any problem with this. That they can manifest in the flesh and actually be appearing in the flesh, and at the same time can just vanish. We got plenty of reports. How many footsteps? How many footsteps I found where there's just one or two, and there's nothing. There's no sign to it. These things are massive. I mean, if you had a bull, a moose, uh, tromping through the woods, there's going to be signs of it. Now, of course, we have the tree breaks and tree twists and all that kind of stuff. But here's what part of the problem is: although we have audio of it, but we don't really have any like video, or I don't even know anybody's ever seen a Bigfoot make a tree structure. Yet tree structures seem to be associated with Bigfoot. Whenever you see Bigfoot sightings, there seems to be tree structures show up. Yet I don't know. I mean, we got a couple of videos of it appears to be Bigfoot throwing a rock or throwing, the one video Tip Thinker Thunker has given us was the one pole vaulting a tree. um, but they're shadowy figures and they don't. I mean, I got images of them where they're half materialized in the middle of the day. Me and Mike were talking about it on the show last night. I showed images and I'm like, you can see it. There's something going on here and it's not pareidolia. So I just think, and I'm discouraged and disappointed that, the movers and the shakers, the those that are kind of pushing the narrative. Why have you? I mean, John Keel was talking about this stuff and writing books about this 60 years ago. John Keel's the one who's famous for the Mothman stuff that was going on in West Virginia, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. He's the one that did all the report. John Keel's the one who went out to Nepal and actually had an interaction and encounter with two Yetis. And he's saying the same thing. Even Ivan Sanderson, who's got a background in zoology and went all over the world 50, 60 years ago, ended up saying the same thing. I've talked to other guys, well-known guys who will not talk about it in public, but they know there's high strangeness, but there's a pressure, there's something going on in the Bigfoot community that for some reason we can't just take it to the next level and just throw it all out on the table and say, you know what, we're having these experiences. Let's stop pretending that we know. Let's stop saying this whole thing. We're not experts. We are experts in our own experience. Let's put it together and realize that we're dealing with something that's greater. You want to call it supernatural? You want to call it interdimensional, ultra dimensional, whatever. They're just placeholders. We're dealing with something that's beyond our understanding. There's a lot of questions to come from that. One of the things is 2007, 2024 now, how come we still are about as clueless about all this stuff as they were 50, 60 years ago?
Yeah,
Right.
it's a lot like the UFO community, it's like there's so much out there, and yet conclusions are very, very difficult to grasp. And I even kind of wonder if they're of the same world.
Oh, well, yeah. If it's not the same world, at least they're the phenomena is awfully similar, isn't it? I mean, and then you look at the UFOs and the connections with UFOs and orbs and Bigfoot. I film stuff. I mean, I got stuff. I filmed stuff at nighttime that looked like ice looking back at me as I'm filming orbs in the sky, right? One of the things I discovered, Linda, this stuff is everywhere. That's one of the problems that bothers me too, is how people are trying to exploit this to the point of like, if you come follow our group, then you'll know the truth. I'm here to tell you people, this stuff is going on everywhere. And it doesn't matter if you live in a suburb, in a city, or out in the pristine wilderness, something's going to happen. And there seems to be a connection with Sasquatch and all this. What is Sasquatch really?
Well, that's a question I ask a lot of people, and I get a different answer oftentimes. The flesh and blood people, of course, takes it into some kind of animalistic kind of ape-like character, and spiritual people take it more into a dimensional being. And it's just difficult to know for sure. But certainly the behavior, oftentimes, it doesn't seem to follow the natural standards of our reality that we know, our physics that we know.
Yeah, well, it doesn't follow it at all. I mean, how can you possibly have something that's supposed to be 600, 800 pounds walking through the snow in the middle of a field? You have footprints, and all of a sudden they disappear. They stop, and there's nothing there. There's nowhere for these things to jump, and there's no trees nearby. I mean, they just vanish. I mean, that's just not going to happen if it was flesh and blood solely. it just can't happen.